What's going on, everyone? Hope you're having a great day. Welcome to the Tundra Dude 34 YouTube channel. If you've been here before, welcome back. If you're new to the channel, welcome aboard. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you know every time I put up a video and or a live stream. We would love to have you involved in everything we do. Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. I took a small trip with my 2020 TRD Pro Tundra, and I decided to record the pump-to-pump calculations. So I'm going to give you how the truck did on the trip up into the mountains and back. Also, after I give you that information on the MPG, I'm going to give you a couple stats from the trip. Just a couple things I noticed driving this truck. It's actually been a long time since I took a trip in this, with travel restrictions and everything going on, and just life getting in the way. I haven't really taken this truck on too many long trips, so today we're going to talk about a just over 300-mile trip, with just a couple notes. So you guys can let me know, some of your trip results and what you've done. I know a lot of you guys tow trailers out there and everything, tow boats. So anything you want to add to this, if you want to add to the MPG or any of the notes, go for it. So if you're here for the MPG pump-to-pump calculations, we'll go over the numbers first and then some details. So let me just tell you this right off the bat. I drove up into the mountains, stayed for a couple days, drove back. It was probably about 75% highway and the rest was local travel, okay? Both times driving to the mountains and out of the mountains, it was sunny, and it was probably between 55 and low 60s, so the temperature was the same. The only difference was this. Driving up into the mountains, I had a very strong west wind that turned into a very strong headwind. It was one of those things that moved the truck all over the road. We'll talk about that in the details. There's just over 6,000 miles on the truck, and I fill my tires to 37 PSI. So keep that in mind. It is a TRD Pro. It does have that slight leveled look in the front, 1.5 to 2 inch lift. Keep that in mind as well if you want to get super scientific with it, which I absolutely did not do with this trip. This is just for fun. I didn't hypermile. I drove the truck like normal. Flow of traffic, especially coming out of New York City toward Pennsylvania, you can't really do anything to help your gas mileage. You just got to stay with traffic. So anyway, so the trip was 311 miles. I drove to fill back up. It took 20.014 gallons of fuel. I used middle grade, by the way, 89 octane. And the fuel mileage worked out to be 15.539. 15.539, so we'll say 15.5. Definitely not my best fuel mileage I've ever gotten on that trip. But now we're going to go into a few details, and I want to start here. Obviously, the Tundra has a 38-gallon tank. I've had a few Tundras now that have had the 38-gallon tank, but something has changed with this truck. I get emails all the time, questions, comments, things like that. Why, when people buy Tundras, does the miles to empty when you fill up go from like high 5s, low 6s, and kind of trickles down, and some people have reported high 4s, things like that. Basically, over time, the truck will calculate, the fuel mileage for the vehicle, and it'll update how much miles to empty. Now, I have always lived, especially in this truck, every time I fill up, it's always in the mid 5s, about 550 to maybe 520 to 550 until empty. Every time I fill up. When I take this trip to and from, no matter what, I can always do it on a full tank of fuel. I don't have to stop to refuel at all, and then have enough fuel to get around the rest of the week. I work very locally to where I live. But this one was different. So when I filled up before I went on the trip, it basically went to the low 4s, around 420 to 440. So as you'll see in a picture popping up right now, and it was burning fuel like I was dragging an anchor. So I'm not really sure. I'm sure the wind had something to do with it. But even when I filled back up and I, did the test or whatever, and I still had a little ways to drive because I couldn't make it all the way home. I mean, I probably could if I took my time and everything, but we ended up having to stop, so I got gas then, and that's where we got 311 miles even. But yeah, it just seems like the truck didn't feel like it was dragging anything, but it was burning through that tank pretty hardcore. So I'm going to see, what's going on with that. But that came out of nowhere. It's always in the 5s, always mid 5s, 500 and something miles till empty. And then all of a sudden I'm starting the last 2 fill-ups, 420, 440. So comment below if you've been dealing with that as well. But when I was driving up into the mountains and back, it was going through that fuel pretty quick. But as far as the truck goes, I made some notes on everything. So we talked about the fuel tank deal with the miles till empty, which is crazy. And the wind was very heavy on the way up. Now, stability of the truck in the wind with the west wind And, you know, with the headwind, obviously any vehicle you drive, SUV or truck, you're going to deal with the same kind of thing. The truck, you know, really is all over the road with all the wind getting under it. It was very, very interesting how much this west wind was pushing this truck around quite a bit on the highway. Two hands on the wheel kind of thing. When I went headwind, it didn't feel like it was all over the road as much, obviously, because it wasn't pushing the truck to the side. You know, and then it was fine, but you could definitely feel like you were being held up by the wind. But that west wind was insane, and it was really moving the truck around. For the first time in this TRD Pro, I actually felt body sway. And we always talk about the TRD rear sway bar and the front TRD sway bar really holding that truck down to the road nice. Not recommended with the TRD Pro suspension, but this definitely felt like the truck would rock kind of along the road and kind of dance through the lane a little bit. But, you know, we got through it. You just take your time. You go easy. You don't go 900 miles an hour. Also, I should mention, being this was mostly a highway trip, my miles per hour were between 70 and 75 most of the time. Like I said, this was not one of those things where I was hypermiling, looking for a day with no wind. I was going on a trip and I decided to do an MPG run just to show you guys what's up. Now the 15.5 I got here, I usually get a little bit higher doing the same exact trip. And like I said, I make it all the way home with fuel to spare. But at this point I had to fill up. So a little bit different on this trip. But as far as driving up, we were going up into the mountains. That west wind was a little bit rough. Obviously, we got through it. It wasn't throwing me all over the road, but it definitely was moving all through the lane, and it took two hands to keep that thing straight, especially when I would hit a bump and the wind would hit me at the same time. That was a pretty interesting situation. Anyone who lives in this area knows coming out of New York into Pennsylvania, the roads, not so good. So it is the way it is. But overall, the truck did great on the ride up. The braking is fantastic on the 2020 TRD Pro. Didn't feel, you know, like it was, you know, body swaying forward or anything on the brake or lunging forward. The braking was nice and balanced, no issues whatsoever on that. You know, I always like the braking on the Tundra. A lot of people complain about it. I never had issues, but this thing, you know, was braking awesome. Obviously, I was keeping my distance from vehicles, not tailgating anyone, but another great thing, the suspension was awesome. I always talk about this, especially on this highway trip. When you get into Pennsylvania, the roads get a little ugly. There's a lot of construction going on, things like that. The suspension really rides over all of those imperfections. It's amazing to me how smooth the ride is with the truck, but it still gives you enough feedback to where it's not like you're not down in the road with the truck where you don't know what's going on, but it really rides those bumps really nice. It's great on, you know, the nice paved roads, which we don't see a lot around here in the Northeast at least, but really on those bumpy roads, it makes a great difference. So I've driven a lot of Tundras with a lot of different suspensions over those same exact roads, and this Fox TRD Pro suspension is amazing. Keep that in mind. If you're looking to buy one, because somebody asked me this the other day, it's about $2,300 and then you got to get it installed. There are a lot cheaper suspensions out there, but this one, definitely worth it. SparksParts.com, promo code TundraDude34 saves you 5%. Just saying. One thing I want to talk about here, engine and transmission worked flawlessly up into the mountains. That is one thing I always like to keep an eye on. It didn't feel like the truck was struggling to get up the mountains. If I had to slow down and then get back on the pedal to get some speed back, you know, if I got behind an 18-wheeler or anything like that, the truck did a great job getting up to speed and holding speed. The transmission didn't feel lost. You know, it dropped down to the gear it needed to go so the truck could go forward. It was amazing and a very good experience, big time, especially going up into those mountains, because I've, again, been in trucks and been in Tundras where it kind of feels like the transmission is a little not sure where to go and how to get up that mountain. This one did great. I've always said the 2020 Tundra for me, with the 5.7 V8 and the transmission, it's like a different animal compared to the earlier versions of the Tundra. Recalibrated engine and everything, it's amazing. So keep that in mind. Here is a popular one people ask all the time. I figured I would bring it up here. TRD dual exhaust. Is there ever any drone in the TRD dual exhaust? It does drone quite a bit when you're going up into the mountains. It's nothing crazy. Had a lot of exhaust in my life. It is not the worst sounding exhaust ever, but when you're going up into these mountains, up the hill, especially if you're having to slow down, like I said, behind an 18-wheeler and get back up to speed, that is when you will hear a little bit of drone from the system. Other than that, it sounds great. It's not drone to the point where I can't talk to the person next to me or anything like that, but there definitely is some drone. So keep that in mind. If you live in the mountains, before you spend any money, drive the stock exhaust, because you get a good amount of sound out of that, and you may not want to deal with the drone issue, especially if you tow. But overall, the truck did great. The fuel mileage, 15.5, not the worst, not the best. Pros and cons of it, like I said, the engine and transmission worked flawlessly. The truck's a pleasure to drive. The handling's great. The suspension's great. There's no brake dive. It's awesome. Love the truck. Best Tundra I've ever owned, and I've owned quite a few of them. And the con I'm going to go with is the way it was in that west wind a little bit there. Like I said, it's not a Tundra thing. It's any kind of bigger vehicle thing. But it was really moving that truck around the road quite a bit. So I was slowing down and keeping my distance a little bit more. I was actually surprised the wind was that heavy out of nowhere. I thought the wind would stay above the trees, but it was sweeping across the highway pretty good there. So that's really all I have to say that's bad about the Tundra. The fuel mileage, once again, not the greatest in the world, but you know, I buy a truck to buy a truck, not to expect Prius kind of mileage out there. But if you guys would like to report your numbers on your MPG or some of your stats from your trips, please do so in the comments below. Or we could do a fan feature on your truck, tundradude34@gmail.com. Send me all the information, pictures, whatever you want. In closing with this, 311-mile trip. 20.014 gallons to fill back up, and it turned out to be 15.5 mpg. So let me know what you think. It is a pleasure to drive the Tundra and a pleasure to make these videos for you. So until next time, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook at TundraDude34, tundradude34@gmail.com. Guys, have a great day, be safe, and be well.